This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
All right, hey, you want to open up this book, this Wheel of Time thing?
Yeah, we have the other half of the prologue to get to.
So we're catching up, man. We haven't talked much at all lately. I feel like it's been, we took all those weeks off. And
life's moving fast.
Life is moving fast.
I swear I blinked and a week went by.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, it feels like several weeks have happened since we talked last.
Talk about how I feel. In the last couple of months, I've gotten married. I'm buying a house. Trump got elected. I lost Timber. Holy crap. It has been just... Wow, you guys are lucky I'm back. Like, you're lucky I love you so much. Like, I can't do this without you. But man, there was times when I was like, I don't know if I can get back on the microphone anytime soon.
Yeah, it's good to have built habits that you rely on, because then it's harder to stop than to just keep doing it. But yeah, we are in it for the love of the game and the autistic monotropic focus. So
yes, this is a way to avoid my problems.
So a way to achieve monotropic flow, which is good for your nervous system.
All right, so Dark Friend Social, or I should say Forsaken Fornication, right?
They're not fornicating. They're distinctly not fornicating.
We're in Grendel's head, so, it works. It works.
Yeah. But it is a Forsaken Frolic.
There we go. Thank you. That's a better term. Forsaken Frolic.
Yeah, this is definitely that kind of fun peek behind the curtain of the dark side, evil thing. And we get to be in Grendel's head, which is always fun. She has a very sarcastic, snarky, sneering way of looking at the world, which is very, very cool. And then we also are going to get into...
Ituralde, and then... what do we end it with? Massima.
And then Massimo. Yeah, we get to see the end of Massimo. We get to see Ituralde, doing his kind of final... magical, awesome victory before everything totally goes to shit for him. And then, we see Massima getting stabbed and dying, and it's very satisfying. I really like the Massima section. The way Faile's just thank you for helping save me. Also, I cannot suffer a bitch to live.
It's, it's one of those things that makes me, after all the Faile hate, this is a scene that really redeems her quite a bit.
Big time. Big time. I'm like, how can you not love her and forgive her for everything she's done before after that scene? I don't know. I love her because of that.
So, okay. And I will voice my, as always, here's my Sanderson complaint for the chapter. I'll try and get these out of the way early on so I don't harp on them throughout. In this scene, Grendel is right about everything. And that drives me absolutely nuts, because nowhere does Jordan make a character right about everything. They have to have incorrect assumptions. Rumors fade to myth. People get confused. Information changes. But this is where Brandon tells us everything straight out through Grendel's POV by her being right about anything. And so there's not a lot of guesswork. It's just yep, that's correct, Grendel. Yes, yep, that's correct, Grendel. And when Grendel doesn't know where Demandred is, that's because we don't know where Demandred is.
I was going to say, but what about her not knowing about Demandred? But I see what you mean. Where we know what's going on.
Exactly. What happened to the unreliable... The difference between Jordan and Sanderson is really the unreliable narrator. Sanderson will never give you false information. Sanderson will build mysteries for you.
Sanderson is a reliable narrator.
But Sanderson is a reliable narrator. Throughout all of his books, Jordan is not. None of his characters are.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way of looking at it, as the core way to understand what's happening here is that we have lost the unreliable narrator, and we are now in the hands of a painstakingly, conscientiously reliable narrator. Conscientious to the point of absurdity, which is it rude to say that that's very Mormon of him?
Yes, but leave it in anyway.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, I think we should keep that in mind as we move forward. And you ready for me to read us in?
Sure, yeah. I was just highlighting everything Grendel was saying, waiting for her to make a mistake, and I was like, she's just right about everything. That's boring.
That's boring. It's not a testament to her intelligence. It's bad writing. I love it. Grendel lounged in a stonework room lined with adoring men and women. Each one a perfect specimen, each one wearing little more than a robe of diaphanous white cloth. A warm fire played in the hearth. illuminating a fine rug of blood red. That rug was woven in the designs of young men and women, entangled in ways that would have made even an experienced courtesan blush. The open windows let in afternoon light, the lofty position of her palace giving a view of pines and a shimmering lake below. She sipped sweet bristle juice, wearing a pale blue dress after the Domani cut. She was growing fond of their fashions, though her dress was far more filmy than the ones they wore. These Domani were too fond of whispering when Grandal preferred a nice, sharp scream. She took another sip of juice. What an interestingly sour flavor it had. It was exotic during this age, since the trees now grew only on distant islands. I just love being in her head. She's just so hedonistic. I mean, even the next paragraph, she goes on to complain about how she had a perfect mix of warm fire and cold air, and then this swirl is introduced by the gateway, and she's so annoyed that, like, this sensual experience she's set up. And it's like, I totally empathize with her. I've absolutely been in that position and been like, your turbulence is ruining my atmosphere. Like, this is so relatable. I relate to her so much here.
And I kind of love her philosophy of like, you know what? Life fucking sucks, so I'm going to enjoy the things that make me feel good.
And make me feel things. I want to feel things. And like, this is her origin story too, right? Her, before she turns to the shadow, she is an ascetic, or however you say that. She like forgoes pleasure. She forgoes luxury. She is dedicated to making the world a better place through depriving herself. And then eventually one day she snaps and is like, actually, the opposite. Everything 180 degrees. I'm not exactly the opposite of everything I believed is now what I believe. And that's why she is the way she is.
Grendel was Mother Teresa.
I know, right? Mother Teresa, who's like,
which Jordan makes a reference to early on, right? In the series.
Yeah.
You know, that's an eye of the
I forget
worldism.
the specific reference, but yeah.
It's like, Mother Teresa or something, healer of all or something, you know.
Something like that.
Which, just so you know, right? She was a terrible person in real life.
Yeah.
Do we all agree on that?
Yeah. As I understand it, the besmirchment is that she was like, we need the poor so that way we can get into heaven by serving them. And it's like, that's kind of fucked up. And she was, did things that made that manifest. But that is the quote that I understand all the shittiness hangs on.
Right. Okay. And that she like kind of didn't give women medical care and made them suffer because suffering is, makes us godly and that sort of thing.
That sounds right. I have never really gone down that rabbit hole. I've only sort of cursorily heard it by osmosis, but like I've heard it enough times with that one specific quote that I'm like, that's a thing.
Yeah, I went down the rabbit hole once, but memory being what it is, I don't remember the details. But yeah, no. Anyway, it's. I always find it ironic that she's immortalized in the Wheel of Time, and then I found out maybe in the future that won't necessarily be the legend. Anyway, moving on. But yeah, the idea that Grendel is this Mother Teresa figure who's all about austerity and suffering and depriving yourself of things has now become this hedonistic. I love it. She's wonderful.
Yeah, I like that. And also, like, there's something to be said for, the Epicurean philosophy, right? Because Epicurean is the opposite of Stoic in, like, philosophical schools of thought. Like, Epicurean is now sort of associated with food specifically.
Right.
But once upon a time, it was the Stoics versus the Epicureans. And the Stoics, of course, are Stoic, and they don't want to have any fun. And the Epicureans are like, YOLO! Obviously, why are we here with senses if not to experience things? So it's like Grendel has a lot of the right philosophy. She chooses to apply it in ways that are outside the bounds of morality.
Right.
But like, there are pieces of her philosophy and her experience of the world where I'm like, I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, if you spent your life thinking you could save the world through denying yourself this, and then Satan comes along and says, you can be immortal and do all the things that you've wished you could do for 300 years. Like, rigid. It's an insight that happens with Alviarin and Elida. That which is rigid, once it breaks, it is the most broken.
Right. It's the flexibility.
I think he actually has multiple people think about that. But like, she was very rigidly denying herself. And so when that broke, it broke bad, and it broke so that way she went from trying to save the world to being willing to sacrifice the whole world to herself. Like, don't be so rigid. Don't think in binaries. Understand everything is confusing and complicated and need context. And then even when you change your mind, you probably won't break into the inverse of all your values.
I feel like I saw that a lot at college, where people had this very tight, controlled upbringing, and then they got this taste of freedom, and they broke in ways that were like they had to rebuild themselves later. Me being possibly one of those people, like
it's a very common story.
Common story of just like, oh my God, you have this external control or internal control, and when you lose it, like suddenly you are out of control because you have no sense of boundary, you have no rails, you have no way of understanding what's good and what's bad, and so I think that's where a less controlled upbringing, where you actually get to experiment without consequences, is probably better, or with fewer consequences anyway, not without consequences, but with less serious consequences, is really important to having adults who are well-adjusted.
I mean, yeah, I say as someone who was given a lot of room to experiment and make my own mistakes and, fail within bounds that my caregivers thought were acceptable. Like, yeah, I have not really rigidly had an ego death breaking point kind of thing like so many other people seem to have had to pass through. I just kind of like vibing along, still feeling like a child most of the time, but like, I haven't had my worldview really radically upended and had my identity thrown out either. So I think that's better.
So you know what Grendal's Palace reminds me of? Have you seen the movie Birdcage, Robin Williams?
No.
Okay. Their place has a little bit of a hedonistic bend to it, and there's a scene where they have the parents over and they're pretending to be straight, and like it's elaborate, right? But there's a bowl with a bunch of like basically crude images around the rim, and the parents go to put on their glasses to look at it, and he like fills it up with soup really quick to cover it up, and her just like the rug was woven in the design of young women and men entangled in ways that would have made even the experienced courtesan blush. That just brought me back to that whole scene in the birdcage with all the like the dirty hedonistic statues and stuff like that. So yeah, great movie, by the way. You should definitely watch that movie if you haven't seen it. Like that is a Robin Williams. Oh God, something Lane. What's his first name? Nathan Lane.
Okay. I noted.
Yeah, just some quotable. Anyway, highly recommend it. One of those movies that I didn't appreciate at the time at all, because of the age I was and because of the culture I was raised in. But going back and watching it, it's an absolute gem. Yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, Grendel gets summoned by a Ken doll, basically. She's like, ooh, did Moradin send me a little snack before our meeting? And then she decides not to, because maybe it's not meant as a little treat, and she doesn't want, to piss him off. But she looks at this man like a little fucking treat, and it's just like, should I have him? No, I'm on a diet.
I was wondering about that. Do you think it's just like he's like setting out a lure so he can punish her later if she like takes him? Do you like, no, he was important, or do we know even who he is?
No, he never comes up again. I honestly bet that if she had just decided to like consume him as a little hors d'oeuvre before the meeting, Moradin wouldn't have minded at all. He probably totally sent it along to be like, this is a treat. You are in for a treat. Right, because what he does is he gives her a little information session and says, this is a taste of the privileges I could give you.
It's a reward, yeah.
So I kind of think that the fact that he presented the information with like a handsome arm candy person was him being like, yeah, no, I like you. Here, have some rewards. Have like a nice young man and some information. Your two favorite things. And it's kind of messed up, but I assume that is what this man was just a snack that did not get taken when proffered.
Because this whole meeting is sort of the final gathering of the troops before the battle, right? Like,
I have no idea if there's any more meetings like this in the next 3 books. I am so clueless about the next 3 books. Like, I've only gone through them like 3 times. I keep trying to get through them on a current reread, but then other books are more interesting. Like, I'm sorry, Sanderson. I'm sorry, but like, I have new books to read, and I know how the story ends now. Like, it's Jordan's stuff that keeps me coming back.
I don't think they all get together again, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely some more coordination between Moradin and Grendel at some point, but whether that's implied or seen from another character's eyes, or if it's in one of their POVs, I don't remember. But I do think that there's at least one more collab between the two of them, because she does very much work to Moradin's ends right up through the end of the battle. Like, she is doing the dream manipulation stuff. Like, she is very much in his pocket the whole way through.
I mean, after the death of Halima, right, with the balefire and Natrim's barrow, she definitely re-meets with him. And it's like she's she's scrambling to save her ass because she got in trouble for letting the Forsaken be balefired.
Right. And then she spins it. Yeah, so we do see a lot more of Moradin and Grandal. But yeah, I don't know if we see any more meetings that involve more than 2 Forsaken at a time. But yeah, this is a meeting in which she gets to essentially just watch Moradin meeting with Demandred and Masana.
And hears about Semirog's capture, because she didn't know about that.
She just barely had learned that Semirog was in the Sean, which again, very fourth wall breaking. We only just learned. Well, I mean, kind of. Not really. We kind of knew for a while.
Well, you and I have known for a while, but like it was the reveal, right? It's been revealed officially to everybody. There's no hints. There's no like, even Jordan Caron said, yes, this is Semirog.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, she's now unveiled herself and blown her cover. So like Grandal is, referring to that, reminding us of that fourth wall breaking with that. And then Moradin is like, but I got to get you up to speed that like she also was captured. That also happened. Because it's important for Grandal to be in the loop, and it is important for us as the readers to be in the loop.
Oh, quick question. They're drinking sweet bristle juice. What do you think that is? Because it's sour. Do you think it's lemonade? Because she says it's from a fruit.
But lemons aren't bristly. I was assuming like prickly pear, which I have no idea if you can make a fermented beverage. But you can ferment anything. Anything
That's
is
true.
Yes,
that is very true. It's got sugar or starch in it. You can ferment it. That's for sure.
Yeah, so I was imagining, prickly pear, not having any idea how practical that is as a beverage. Oh, well, apparently you can make delicious desserts from prickly pear. Cactus juice.
Possibly,
maybe?
yeah.
But yeah, lemons don't have spines. I would love it if lemons had spines. That'd be very cool, but they don't.
She does say it's a tree. The trees now grew only on distant islands. So...
Well, that doesn't mean anything. It could be a shrub. It could be a plant that grows only in tall trees. It could be an actual tree. I mean, trees barely even exist.
Yeah, trees are a terrible category.
What about rhododendrons? Are rhododendrons a tree? Well, sometimes they're big enough to operate as forests, but they are not really trees. They're shrubs.
Yeah, no, I learned recently that tree is just like a phenotype, right?
Much like fish.
Yeah.
Trees and fish do not really exist in the strictest sense. If you actually get scientists to drill down on it, then it turns out that the boundaries are completely fuzzy, and it is behold a man while holding a featherless chicken. Like it's behold a man all the way down.
Durian sweet bristle juice. She said sour, not vomit inducing. We do see a member of the Domani Council, which Rand is looking for, right? One of them is in Grandal's possession. Like, so we do get confirmation that, like, yeah, he's not going to find her anytime soon.
Her name's Therasa, which is kind of close to Teresa. Call back to our conversation a few moments ago.
No, that's true. Yeah. Just Mother Teresa keeps coming up over and over again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She confirms Samael's dead. Like, just a lot of confirmations in her own head. She's like, oh, yeah, Samael's dead. He's been gone since Shadow Logoth.
Right. She's like, I'm pretty sure that the Wall of Death fog took him out.
Or Rand. Also Wall of Death.
Right. But that's, again, like you're saying, like that's what we know.
Yes.
As the readers, we're pretty sure the Wall of Death fog took him out. We know it wasn't Rand, but like Rand's pretty sure it was Mashadar. There's no evidence not to think it was Mashadar. So she's literally just echoing back our own thoughts to us.
Which is crazy because she wasn't there. Why would she think it wasn't Rand who killed him? Why would she think it was Mashadar in any way, shape, or form? That's what I'm saying. Like, she has knowledge that I feel like...
Because they were in Shadar Logoth.
Yeah, but she would assume that Rand killed him. Unless Rand is out there being like, no, he's not talking. He didn't come back. He just said he's gone and dead. He didn't tell anybody the Mashadar took him out.
Yeah. I always figured that she figured that it was like 80% likely that Rand had killed him, but on the off chance that it wasn't Rand, then Mashadar definitely did, because like he vanished after a trip to Shadar Logoth. Presumably it was Rand, but if it wasn't, then like he didn't come out of there alive, and Mashadar is the only other thing that it could be. That was how I always interpreted her assessment of the situation.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask about the fortress or the farm outside. So it's she goes to this fortress in the Blight, and it's made out of black stone for reasons unclear. Again, I'm with Grandal. Like, yeah, why would you build out of black stone here? But whatever, aesthetics. It's literally a black stone thing in a red soil, so you've got the black and red theme. Like, again, like ridiculous, overdone. But who is the they trying out crops, and what are who is the they that are trying out crops?
I mean, is this like the village, right? Is he built the fortress right near the village clearly what Brandon Sanderson has done here is he has brought an ecosystem to the Blight that we kind of knew had to be there, because how can you get all those Trollocs and how can you feed them and all that kind of stuff, and how do you forge blades for the Fades, and how do you, like, where are they taking all these people? Like, we always knew there had to be an ecosystem, but I feel like Brandon Sanderson really said, I'm going to sort of give you some of that ecosystem. And so I'm going to create the village. I'm going to create this fortress. I'm going to have people growing crops. How do they survive? What's going on? Like, somehow people survive in the Blight, right?
That was not my impression from the first 11 books.
But, like, that's what Brandon has done. That's what he's done. He's creating this basically Dark One refugee in the Blight where the evil guy comes from.
So you're saying that this is the town where Slayer grew up?
Could be, or it could be just something else like that, right?
I thought there was only the one, but okay.
Me too.
I definitely do agree that it makes sense that you need someone to make food, because it's very unsustainable to be a meat eater with a closed system. Like, the entropy will not allow you to swell your armies. That's not how carnivorous cycles work. But I just have such a hard time with the idea that there's a population of universally enslaved humans making it go and doing agriculture in the Blight, and they've been doing it this whole time and no one knows about them. I just find that really, really implausible, and I was hoping that this was some sort of, like, it's just a fortress in the Borderlands where shit's really harsh.
No, okay, so, like, we know one of the great reveals, right? Athlon is pointing this out, that you have these red-veiled Aiel that are being sent to the Blight, turned, and are coming back. Great reveal. Obviously set up by Jordan. Where have they been this whole time? Who's been feeding them?
Yeah.
Obviously there is a group of people living in the Blight. There has to be, for a lot of the other things that were set up to make sense.
I mean, I guess, but, like,
you have all the red-veiled Aiel. You have dark friends.
I'm just so surprised that the Borderlanders are completely unaware of them. Like, that's what really blows my mind, is that the Borderlanders never once mentioned there being a human presence beyond the line that they were holding. And that just feels really missing to me.
It feels like none of them ever come out, right? You go up and you don't leave, essentially.
Well, and you don't leave any trace. There's no smoke trails. There's no roads. There's no networks. There's no, like, mass killing sites that have ever been found. There's no footprints. There's no horses. There's no stray chickens. No random patches of wheat at a village that got burned down one time, but the wheat has kind of gone rogue.
I think we've stumbled onto one of those, like, Jordan just didn't, he's like, that's where the evil creatures live, and didn't really think much past that. And Sanderson said, oh God, but we've got all these other people that need to come down out of the Blight. Where the fuck do I get them from? And so he created this culture. And it's not that well laid out or anything, but he created an ecosystem in the Blight, and this is what we live with, right?
You mean an economy?
Sure.
Because, I mean, we knew there was an ecosystem. We knew there was Styx and Jumara, and, like, I thought there were plants and animals. I just didn't think there was, like, a whole alternative mirror world of people happening. I guess that's more on Jordan than on Sanderson.
Right.
So I guess we'll just have to live with it as a eye of the worldism on a grand scale.
Because, like, where else are all these dreadlords going to come? Where are these armies going to come from, if not the Blight?
I mean, I always thought that was a weird weak hole in the Dark One's plan. Is, like, you can't just keep spawning. This isn't a video game. Like, what are your logistics, Dark One? So I guess this is that answer.
I think Sanderson had to sit down and come up with something. And basically what we're getting is some vague references to making crops work, right? And that's actually something we also see. I'll call out Mistborn, which is a series where they're living in an apocalypse with ash raining from the sky, and they're constantly trying to come up with crops that will survive in this what should be non-survivable environment, right? And this feels very similar to me in terms of like him creating that system.
Yeah, that is one of the Sanderson books I've read, and you're right. That does feel like an expansion out from this little taste here. All right, well, I've always wondered if it was bad guys or just some weird Borderlander situation I didn't understand, and I was tending towards the latter, so it's good to know that I was wrong and that there is a solid reason to believe that it is in fact the former.
It's a hard plot hole to solve, right? I really do think Jordan didn't address it very well. It was just that there will be a last battle, there will be Trollocs, there will be Dreadlords, And I think it would have been cool if a lot of the Dreadlords just popped out, like betrayed the White Tower in the middle of the last battle, but, then we wouldn't have had the Varen reveal, right? So, yeah, I'm happy with how they did it. I'm not super upset with it, but I do wonder what Jordan was thinking when he was like, I mean, if we go back to his experience in the Vietnam War, just endless enemies coming out of the jungle doesn't seem that crazy, right? And he doesn't really worry about where they come from.
Yeah, but in this world, they're like magical evil monsters, and in the real world, they were human beings whose homes were being invaded.
Right.
There are different logistics here.
Yes. Obviously.
Yeah, I think the problem is that he was operating with 1980s fantasy book logic, which is that you're going to write a trilogy at most, and you don't need to think about long things.
Yeah.
And we see him catching himself mid-trip on that repeatedly throughout the series, and this is just a really big one that Sanderson actually had to catch.
Because, go back to Eye of the World, how big was that Trolloc army that ran destroyed with the Eye of the World, right? That was going to end the world because there wasn't enough armies to stop it. They were going to flood down and nobody was going to be prepared, right? So I often argue, what was the Eye of the World for? It was literally to stop that army, right? Otherwise, last battle over, world conquered, no fighting back, no chance.
But God, can you imagine how it's been for people living in the Blight this whole time? They don't get a choice, right? They're just born there, and they have to. Because no matter how many Borderland contingents you mind pixie away into the Blight, you're gonna need, the population will have to be self-sustaining at some point over however many centuries each thing exists. So what we even see in the descriptions of the town that Slayer talks about, that there are children. It is a multi-age population. So,
although I did assume some of those children were kidnapped.
Sure, yeah, that could be. But still, you've got people growing up there who don't have a choice, right? It's I don't know, being in North Korea or something, right? You're under an oppressive regime and you can't leave, but you did nothing on your own to get there. You're just there and existing in it. And that's apparently how people have been living, unbeknownst to the rest of the world for however many centuries, as much as 3,000 years. That's kind of bleak. Can we move back to the actual book now?
The one thing I will say about the Blackstone Keep, I think you're asking where did that come from? Maybe it was a pre-breaking artifact, stone keep, right? And that it got, with the land moving around and everything, it ended up in the Blight.
Yeah. All right. Athlon gave a horrible idea in chat I'm just going to have to give voice to. There were extensive breeding programs in the Blight. But that makes sense because we know Masana had schools of children and stuff, and they were a terror as the war was winding down, and we had the breeding programs that Agenor did to make Trollocs and Myrddraal. So breeding programmy, eugenic-y kind of weirdness would definitely have been in the initial scaffolding that the Blight started out with in the post-breaking world. That's bleak. That's terrible and bleak. Thank you for your contribution.
and you have lots of sperm donors in the male Aes Sedai, or the male channelers, right?
Oh, so many male channelers. You'd have and you would be reverse culling, right? It'd be the reverse of culling. You'd actually be concentrating the channeling gene with having so many rejected male channelers going and finding a second life. Ooh. Ugh. Dislike. Strong dislike.
The one piece of information Grendel doesn't know about Moradin is that they've crossed the streams, and the things that affect Rand affect Moradin. Although there's a couple of clues in this chapter.
Yeah, he flexes his left hand. I mean, you get the idea, but yes, that is the one thing she doesn't know. Is like he flexed his left hand for some reason, but we still know. It's very, very clear and obvious to us, so it doesn't feel like a big mystery because it's not.
And she asks herself, why not just kill Rand and be done with it? And it's obvious that, like, well, they're linked, and that would probably kill Moradin as well.
Well, and the whole, like, I need to kill him at the right time and place to make the magic ritual work. Like, there's so many metaphysical reasons that she's just being willfully ignorant of.
We get, then Demandred and Masana walk in together because they didn't think Grendel would be there, so they didn't try and hide their alliance. So then they're like, fuck. Like, they got caught
Right?
together. It's like, Demandred and Masana sitting in a tree.
Plotting.
Nice. I was going with channeling CHAN. And that's where, and she gets to be this passive observer throughout the whole meeting, which gives her a lot of clues. So then sort of we get a list of where all the Forsaken are in her head, right? She says Masana's in the White Tower. She says Agonor's in the Rebels. Moradin's gathering the Great Lord's forces. Sindane and Moghedien are under his control, rallying the Dark Friends and trying to kill Perrin Barra and Matt Cawthon. But she doesn't know what Demandred's doing. So it's just like this rapid fire, 2 paragraphs. This is what every single Forsaken is doing, in case you've forgotten. Here's some recap.
Because it's the opening of the book and it is exposition time. That is how books work. Books in this series, not necessarily new books, obviously, but books in general.
But Grendel makes no wrong assumptions. She's right about every single Forsaken, and the ones she doesn't know, she says straight out, I don't know, and doesn't try and guess.
Yep.
And I also think there's this line. She was confident she knew the plans of every one of the other 7 remaining chosen except Demandred. And again, I think this is a little fourth wall breaking. I think that all of the other ones had plans written by Jordan, or it was obvious what they were doing based on context clues, except Demandred. I think there wasn't a lot written about what Demandred was supposed to do.
So Demandred's kind of like Perrin?
Yeah, that's my guess.
Like really just like, oh, I like that. I like the idea that like Sanderson's just telling us what he's doing and what he had to work with and just kind of laying it all out. Like cards on the table. This is what we got. I like this interpretation. Even if we're completely wrong, I like it.
I mean, I could be reading into it, but it's fun to think of it that way.
Yeah, it's a book. You're supposed to read into it. She thinks here about how dumb Demandred is to bear this grudge against Lews Therin, which, we know, yes, that is all that he does in the last battle is stand on a battlefield and come at me, bro. Come at me, bro. Come at me, bro. And that's like literally his contribution.
What a disappointing end to such a schemer and like mastermind.
I know. He takes out a couple of minor characters.
Gollin.
Gets taken out by a
Gollin.
He doesn't take out Gollin.
I meant Gollin.
He only maims Gollod, and it's fine. And then Lan takes him out through some sort of weird superhero maneuver that made no sense because he clearly was killed. But then, ta-da, he's not dead. Whatever, writing trick.
Well, that's because Rand brought him back to life because Rand's God.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Neo. Like, what fucking ever. But anyhow, it is such a waste. And Amy, she even thinks here, like, he could have been the dragon on the other side. He could have been a champion for the light. The only reason he is a dark friend, the only reason he is friends with us is because this one time, this one guy was kind of mean to him in middle school. And that's the entire reason why he's a Nazi now. Like,
damn it, Snape.
This man is pathetic. This man is pathetic. I love Grendel just being like, this man is pathetic.
He is pretty pathetic.
And it's like, correct. He will continue to be pathetic the entire series. Even at the end when he's like, I want to have a redemption arc by falling in love with a random woman. It's like, no, that is not compelling. You're pathetic.
Because he also treats her terribly, like a slave, right? Like it's, no, not her as much, but like.
He treats all of her people like slaves, but he brings her chocolate.
Right.
So it's fine. It's fine.
She also obeys his every command.
Yeah, because she loves him.
Oh, okay.
It's different.
That's how love works. Sorry, my bad.
That is totally how love works, and it...
Let me hold on. I have to go tell Never something really quick.
Where's that life insurance policy you got?
Yeah, and then I love this Grendel. There are no other armies moving anywhere in the world. Like there are other continents on and gateways.
The
make the world small.
Eurocentrism is a lot from these people.
Yeah, seriously.
You know?
Yeah. Dude, he shows up with the Mongol army, and they go, "Where did these people come from?" Right?
Yeah, they must be from a whole other planet. There's no other people in the world. It's like they're the Mongols.
You know, Asia's over there, right? There's a lot of it.
There's not even an ocean, guys. I know mountains are tall, but there's not even an ocean.
There's a desert, there's some mountains, but it's land, and you trade with those people. You have silk. You are aware of the people who make silk.
You have actively sold resources in this direction. You have seen money go that way. What?
Now, in fairness, I found the Sharns a complete surprise at the end of the book, even though having gone through the podcast, I realized how heavily they are foreshadowed as being something.
I mean, I was expecting the place where silk comes from to come out of nowhere at some point, like the Kool-Aid Man. The way it was being foreshadowed, I was like, when this hits, when we finally get an explanation, it's not going to be what any of us expected. That's clearly what's going to happen. So I was anticipating it.
I was thinking it was going to come out more with Matt because he's got Noel with him, who's been there. And so Noel's always telling the stories, right? And I thought that would be relevant somehow.
Right, because then we could have gotten some exposition as the explosions were going down. It would have been awesome.
Who are those people? Those are the damn Sharns,
Right. Yeah, totally. But, I was content with how they got used. The White Tower was definitely getting OP and needed to get knocked down to keep the tension high. So, but, yeah, Demon Dread really was not necessary to make that plot work. We just needed someone to go over and teach them how to travel. They just needed someone to help them with traveling. That's it.
Here's my biggest disappointment with Demon Dread. Full fucking circle. And he got taken out with a sword. Right. Masana was a scholar to the core. Sometimes Grendel thought Masana had gone over the shadow because it offered a more interesting opportunity for research. I thought you would have something to say about that.
I mean, first of all, no, that's not what she did. She went over to the dark side because she got spurned for research. They told her that she was better suited to teaching than to research, and she was a spurned academic. And every academic I've talked to says that this is 100% completely reasonable. I didn't get that deep into academia, so I wouldn't know. But that sounds right based on academics I've known. But I do, again, this is one of those sections where I'm just like, these Forsaken are getting too relatable. Because, if there was ever something that would tempt me to unholy acts, like immortality or whatever, it's for the research opportunities. People are like, oh, I don't want to be immortal. That'd be ridiculous. I'm like, no, the research though. For me, the opportunity for more interesting research is I will re-examine a lot of my boundaries in the quest for a more interesting research opportunity. So, I think of myself that way. I don't know if that's actually true, but because I've never been given interesting research opportunities in that regard. But it just feels very relatable. Masana feels very relatable in this interpretation by Grendel.
All right. If you'd be Masana, if you were Forsaken, what Forsaken would I be?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've always identified Masana as being my favorite Forsaken. That is my avatar Forsaken. It's the academic who's really just leave me alone to read the cursed book, please.
As much as I would like to claim somebody different, I think I got to go with Moradin. The nihilist perspective is just a little too on the point.
I mean, it is a mood.
Yeah, it's a mood.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah. All right. Moradin, we get his new body, which is handsome enough, almost pretty. And I want to ask you about this. What do you think about her Grendel's assessment as Masana as a second-rate chosen?
I mean,
Asmodean.
We see, yeah. I mean, we see a track record in the books that is very lackluster, right? She does a lot to fuck up the tower, but a lot of the things she tries to do within that don't work the way she wants them to. Right, she succeeds in the big mission to fuck up the tower, but a lot of the little things she tries to do, she doesn't succeed in. And a lot of the other Forsaken's assessments of her are a little bit of a B student. And we have some pretty epic Forsaken. So yeah, I'd say we have Agenor, Asmodean, Masana, like they're on
Some
a
beasts,
different shelf.
yeah.
It's just a different tier. It's not that they're bad at being Forsaken. They're just not quite Grandal, Semirog, Lanfear kinds of exciting.
And they were probably better Forsaken in the Age of Legends, where they had labs and societies they were familiar with, and academia.
Yeah, I mean, that might be it. Is that some of the Forsaken were much more specialized to the environment that they came up in, and some of them are much more generalists. And, anyone who's studied anything in that kind of science realm knows that, like, generalists are going to do better with catastrophic change. I mean, that's why mammals took over after the KT extinction, right? Because they were generalists rather than the specialists that dinosaurs were, broadly speaking.
I mean, so we look at Agenor, who's this geneticist, right? Like, and he's probably using the one power on a scale that no other Forsaken can even comprehend to deal with all the the genetic manipulation that he's dealing with. And
but there's no microbiology in this world.
And there's no microbiology, right? He has no lab. He's not doing anything, right? So now he's stuck as pretending to be a farmer on a horse as an Ashaman, right? Like he's pathetic.
Right, exactly. Asmodean was doing art. He was an art and culture person. The art and culture have completely changed. Right. He's completely not tapped in. He's not like a traveling gleeman bard type person. He was like a court bard, the equivalent of, right? He's a rock star and there's no stadium concerts anymore, right? Like, how is he supposed to do his shit when there's not even amplification, right? Like, it's, whereas, you've got sadism and hedonism, those are timeless. They could find a home anywhere, right? Like, torturing people is torturing people is torturing people. Yeah, I wonder if that's part of why we have different tiers of Forsaken, is just because they're more fish out of water than the others. Masana was a researcher. Who knows what the fuck she was researching, but probably nothing that's relevant to the modern day.
Yeah, because they were on like the cutting edge of all these cool things they could do, right? And it's like, I don't care if you know how to create nuclear power if you can't build the steam engine, right? Like,
right? Yeah.
There's so many levels between here and there. My job, where I'm like working on machines that make computer chips, right? Like the amount of infrastructure that has to be in place before any of my knowledge becomes even slightly relevant is astronomical.
Right. Or like, to hop over to my other topic with my other podcast, Used to Sew, like a modern serger, a modern, like, get in the seat and drive this massive thing like embroidery machine versus like, one of the early prototype machines versus hand sewing. Like, these are become very uncomparable. Like, doing a modern long arm embroidery machine or quilting machine versus like a hand crank in 1870. Like, these are not the same. These are both technically sewing, but these are both sewing machines even, but you can't translate the skills from one to the other. And now you're being asked to make an entire dress with a mouse bone?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is not helpful. I'm not a seamstress at this scale,
Yeah, she wonders what the next thing I have is what possessed someone to build a fortress out of black rock in the Blight's heat. I think this goes again with, like, I think it was moved during the breaking. So I doubt it was built in the Blight. I think it's just old. Sure. Best guess.
Maybe it wasn't even black rock. Maybe it's all desert patina at this point because it's that old. No, 3,000 years would not be long enough at all.
No. I was like, come on, you know better.
I know. But wouldn't it be cool? And then we get the most unforsaken like exchange ever.
Oh my God.
We have a duty to rescue our friend because she's one of us. Like, in what world has a Forsaken ever appealed to our duty?
Yeah.
Like, no.
I like roll my eyes. It's like, come on, Egwene, shut up. No.
Yeah, exactly. What is Egwene doing in this room? That is ridiculous. Like, get out of here.
Rand, we have to rescue Egwene. I know it. And it's like, no, what is going on with these Forsaken?
Yeah, like, you're Forsaken. You're not the heroes. Stop acting like you're not. Shush, Masana.
Your alliance ends the moment she gets captured. You know that. I know that. Sanderson should have fucking known that. Everyone knows that,
yeah,
right?
Everyone knows that.
Alliance over.
It's so silly.
Yeah, it's very silly.
Like, I almost think it's the only reason it's there is to give him the conversational room to have the exposition necessary. Like, because it makes no sense. Like Masana would never say that.
It just gives Moradin a chance to say she deserves her imprisonment and flex his hand, right? And like get all frustrated. That
Exactly.
It's just like
we needed that line, but how do we get there? By Masana being out of character, honorable.
Mm-hmm.
What? No.
Yeah.
No.
Right? And beyond that, she's a member of the little alliance you made, perhaps the strongest member. Losing her will be a blow. No, losing the strongest member means that's more for the other two.
I have listened to enough of Allie and Gus describing survivor rules with respect to the Forsakens jockeying. Yeah, no, that is absolutely not how that logic works. This is nonsense.
Okay, question for you. We get report from our woman from Masana, who was in the room, thinks that the bolt of fire was a reaction of surprise, not an intention to kill. Who is that woman in the room who's not captured?
Yeah, I was wondering who, because we're talking about a Seanchan, right?
Maybe. I think that's the only person who could be. Could it be Elsa?
Oh no, it has to be Elsa because Semirog is the person in charge of all the Seanchan. So none of their eyes and ears would be reporting to Masana. Masana would be getting reports from people on Rand's side of the equation. So it has to be Elsa.
And, it's a woman, clearly.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah.
Then we get this line, nobody kills Althor but me, from Demandred, which it's very interesting that, like, Moradin agrees with him and is like, you are the Great Lord, right? And it's basically like, you have permission to kill him. Okay, I guess that must be one of Demandred's conditions for continuing to fight, but it's like, why? Maybe because he's being effective and has these armies. That's the demand he's made.
But, like, I thought that earlier in the series, Moradin said that only he gets to kill Rand.
Yeah, only he gets to decide when Rand dies. I think he said something like that, right? Like...
Oh, no, you're right. But then also we know that what actually happens, of course, is that Rand and Moradin do the final sword fight and Demandred is like hundreds of miles away.
Right. So I think this might be one place where Moradin is just lying. He's just like, yeah, I'm not.
I think that's the only explanation.
He's like, yeah, sure, you can kill him.
Demandred spends the whole battle expecting Rand to show up and battle him like he doesn't have a duel with the devil to do. So, like, yeah, Moradin's just like, sure, buddy, you get whatever you want. Yeah, Rand will definitely be packaged up and washed and cleaned and with a bow on his head and ready for you to kill. Like, absolutely, buddy, trust me, pinky promise. And he's just lying through his teeth.
Well, and I think maybe possibly Demandred does think that he will get warning if Rand approaches the Dark One. Because remember, Rand gets that bronze dagger from Avienda that hides him from the Dark One. So I bet that there's this idea that, if he approaches, I will summon you back to Shale Ghul and you will be able to fight him there, right? And he's not getting that message, so he's like, oh yeah, he's out on the field doing the fighting, right? And he is, right? But he's also then, when travels to Shale Ghul at a mysterious time, holding the dagger, and the Dark One is surprised when he shows up. Moradin's not really, though.
No.
Because they're connected.
Because they're quantum entangled. Mm-hmm. It's not Dark One stuff. The bronze dagger does not guard against being quantum entangled with someone. That makes sense.
Yeah, and of course, we get that line that Semirog failed, utterly leaving him wounded despite my express command that he wasn't to be harmed, and I forbid you to send her any aid. Except the Dark One sends her aid, right? Because, like, the Dark One goes and frees her with Shada Haran.
Well, as Grandal thinks, perhaps the Dark Lord will have use, or maybe Moradin says, like, perhaps he'll have use for her later. He does.
Yeah.
The Dark One literally decides at some point, the most useful thing to do with her is going to be to release her and have her kill Min with Rand's hand. Like, she's just on ice. She's just on ice in storage. The Dark One will let her out when he's good and ready.
The next little bit is just more about what the Forsaken are doing, right? Masana's say, I will deliver the tower broken.
One of the lines I really like from her in that is, more and more join our cause, some intentionally, others unwittingly. It is the same either way. I thought that was a very interesting line because it makes you question all the good guys, right? It means that every single thing that the Black Aja hunters and Egwene and soon to be Varens revealed, like, all of that feels like in jeopardy, because what if it's actually all working, especially the Black Aja hunters, like, are they actually working against their own cause by doing what they're doing. I mean, they're not, but it throws doubt on that, which...
This makes me feel like Masson is bluffing. She's like, oh, yeah, I got it all under control. Meanwhile, totally slipping out of her control.
Yeah, but I like it as a line because it's such blanket suspicion on everything. Every single thing has to be re-examined with that sort of a claim. And also, sometimes, you can actually be co-opted to do things that are against what you think you should be doing, despite your intentions. You can actually, work to opposite ends, and it doesn't really matter your intention. The impact is what counts.
I mean, meanwhile, you've got Arangar in the Rebels saying she's got that all under control and she's going to deliver the tower. And I love that, like, Egwene takes them both down. Just like, no, you're both useless.
In her sleep.
Literally. And then Demandred, of course, we get my rule's secure, I gather for war, right? So he's ruling somebody, which is more than we knew before, and he's getting ready for war. So he has armies. Now, we know now, of course, that's the Sharans, but it was mysterious. She's thinking the Borderlanders. I still think the Band of the Red Hand, because he's, Van and Dread is very real. I still think this is evidence for Van and Dread.
This does not poke holes in Van and Dread.
It does not.
At all. Mm-hmm. In many ways, it very strongly supports it. This is a supporting evidence piece for Van and Dread.
The only problem is that
my favorite late series headcanon.
if he's trying to kill Matt or Perrin, right, killing Matt, Van would be very well positioned to kill Matt. But
not until the right moment.
That's true.
Killing him at the right time is very important. I like that Grandal has a moment of being a little bit grateful that the fruit juice she's drinking hasn't spoiled, or the wine that she's drinking hasn't spoiled. It's kind of like, the Dark One's spoiling all the food and drink and things that shouldn't be spoiled, and we're going to have to suffer through that just like everyone else. And it's nice that this wine isn't spoiled. She's just enjoying that little moment of like, enough stuff is spoiling that this is nice to not have be spoiled.
Why? I'm just like, why are you supporting the Dark Lord if he's going to spoil your wine, right? If you can't even drink good wine.
Right?
Like, oh, God, so frustrating. Like, he's obviously lying about all the good stuff.
Obviously. Like, how can you be so smart and so stupid? So yeah, Moradin dismisses the two of them and then turns to Grandal and says, so did you like getting to eavesdrop without actually eavesdropping? Did you like just getting to be in the room and lord it over the other two? Did you enjoy that? I can give you more of that. You can be nameless to the nameless. Would that be nice?
Right.
She's like, I did enjoy that. Purr.
Assistant to the branch manager.
Right. But she's like, this is how I climb the corporate ladder, and I'm very here for it. And then she says, what's my assignment? He tells her. She's like, I obey, await, and serve, and goes off to do her thing.
Create chaos in Aradia, which she's already done by kidnapping a bunch of the, council members. Or whatever they're called. Yeah,
but he says you cannot let peace come. Rand al'Thor is going to do his darndest to make peace happen despite all the Merchant Council kidnappings you've done. So, like, keep that pot a-boiling. And she's like, okay, that's my job.
And she pretty much successfully does until he comes down off the mountain. But that's after he balefires her, right? So,
I mean, yeah, she's doing a great job right until she loses all of her ability to exist in that world. She doesn't technically die, but, all of her power dies in terms of her ability to mess with Aradia. All of her Aradia persona dies in that balefire stream.
And basically all of Perrin's arc with the White Cloaks and the trap and all that coming up has to do with her trap trying to kill him. Like, his entire arc is basically established here because Grendal is setting a trap for him with the Trollocs.
Established here? How is it established here?
Because he says, if you're going to do anything, kill Perrin and Rand. Or Perrin and Matt. And so Grendal says, well, first of all, I've already sent, and we'll talk about that because Grendal is the Lord Dragon in Mesa Anna's POV. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But she has been trying to kill Perrin. She sent the Tinker after him. Aram. And she's setting the Trolloc trap up. That's going to be sprung later.
Yeah, I kind of thought that the Trolloc trap was something that she got going after she was on her last chance, so to speak, before she's actually last chance. But no, she sets it up now and then pulls the pin on it.
I think so.
Later.
Yeah.
But she is setting it up now.
That would be my assumption.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's like, I'm a good little dark friend. I'm a good little Forsaken, and goes off to cause chaos as she does. And yeah, goes back to Aradia, which I think might be like our It's a good reminder that she's in Aradia. She's not just in a palace somewhere. She's specifically in Aradia.
Which we later learn is Natram's barrow, which later gets balefired, right? So I do like her pointing out, strangely, he looks a great deal like Al Thor, when he stood like that, looking at Moradin. And it's like, yes, they are linked. They are entangled. They're picking up each other's mannerisms. The black and gold is something they're both picking up and fixated on. The black and red, not the black and gold. They're feeling each other's pain. There's a lot of there's some interesting things going on between the two of them in terms of they're linked very closely, and he's making that very clear as we get ready for the body swap.
Yeah, they are becoming into a place of sharing their brain cells.
And then I thought this is a prophecy that Moradin is quoting, this final line. The end is near, the wheel has groaned its final rotation, the clock has lost its spring, the serpent heaves its final gasps. He must know pain of heart, he must know frustration, and he must know anguish. Yeah,
that does sound very prophetic.
I get the feeling that he is quoting a dark prophecy there. The wheel has groaned its final rotation. It's like, this is, in order to win, these are the things that have to happen. The dragon must know anguish. Because again, I go back to the fact that the last battle was won on the mountain, right? Veins of Gold is when Rand won the last battle. Because only he can destroy the earth. At that point on, it was just like, how bad is the Fourth Age going to be? Right? Like, only Rand could have really ended the world in that moment. From then on out, it was like, okay, is the Fourth Age going to be overrun by Trollocs and shitty, or are we actually going to win this battle and have a future? But to win the last battle, I think the Dark One must have the Dragon Reborn know anguish, and he must destroy the world.
Right. And, Natram's barrow, in its own way, is part of how he knows true anguish. Like, she doesn't intend it that way, but it does happen. Her actions do lead to Rand hitting the kind of rock bottom that will let him pass through that crucible.
Somewhat unintentionally on her part, but yes.
It works out.
It works out, yeah.
Moradin isn't doing this for Grandal's benefit,
Rodel Ituralda.
Yeah.
Fun name to say.
Let's do it. He does have a good name.
And this is just a lot of wisdom in, I feel like, this chapter. A lot of battle wisdom with this guy. This is really where I think Sanderson's like, oh yeah, I'm going to write one of the four generals, and I'm going to write him pretty badass because he's fighting the Seanchan.
Yeah. There's a lot of good material to work with set up by Jordan, and Sanderson was like, I'm in the group with this one right out of the gate.
Definitely. Rodel Ituralda's mother, now 30 years buried in the clay hills of his Domani homeland, had been fond of a particular saying, things always have to get worse before they can get better. She'd said it when she'd yanked free his festering tooth as a boy, an ailment he'd earned while playing at swords with the village boys. She'd said it when he'd lost his first love to a lordling who wore a hat with feathers and whose soft hands and jeweled sword had proven he'd never known a real battle. And she'd say it now if she were with him on the ridge, watching the Seanchan march upon the city nestled in the shallow valley below. He studied the city, Darluna, through his looking glass, shading the end with his left hand, his gelding quiet beneath him in the evening light. He and several of his Domani kept to this small stand of trees. It would take the Dark One's own luck for the Seanchan to spot him, even without looking glasses of their own. Things always had to get worse before they could get better. He'd lit a fire under the Seanchan by destroying their supply depots all across the Elmouth Plain and into Terrebonne. He shouldn't be surprised, then, to see a grand army like this one, 150,000 strong at least, to come quench that fire. It showed a measure of respect. They did not underestimate him, these Seanchan invaders. He wished that they did.
Yeah, there's just so much wisdom in that. I love it.
And just good battle sense. And I mean, he's setting up a trap, right? This is great general stuff that I kind of love the way it's written.
So this is the army that we were confused about last time, right?
I think so. I'm trying to remember our confusion last time.
Yeah, because I believe what happened is that he had the one army, and then he shoved them all into the houses, and threw their, hid them and threw their costumes on other people, and thus invented and poofed an army out of nowhere. And that's the quote unquote missing army. I'm pretty sure is like, because the one army vanished, right? They're still out there, but they're not known because all their outfits are now on people who aren't soldiers, creating a ghost army.
Gotcha. Okay. I
believe that's what's going on here. And that was where our confusion was coming from last time, just from thinking about it and from some comments people have made in Discord. Pretty sure that's what's going on there.
And so he wins this battle, right? We find out in chapter 6 he wins this battle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely destroys this. But then there's another Seanchan army that pops up and has him trapped, and that's when Rand shows up.
Right. He loses enough of his forces on this battle and in subsequent engagements that, the army that comes after this one is the problem army, because the Seanchan have endless bodies to throw at this compared to what Ituralde has. I mean, technically there's an end to it, but not compared to what Ituralde has. So he can defeat a whole army. Great. They'll just send another one. And he doesn't have just another one to throw back at them. So that's when Rand comes in and saves them. But yeah, for now, he has set up a perfect death trap, and it's going to go so well and so according to plan that we're going to spend no page time on the battle itself.
Right. It's just the
fade
setup
to black as it starts, and then when we come back, he's walking through the aftermath, which I love battles that you don't actually see. You just see the setup and the aftermath. I love that as like a device to pass time.
I like that too, because not necessarily that writing a battle is boring, right? I do enjoy a good battle. But when a book is all battles, sometimes I'm like, okay, I can the guy swinging the sword for the 18th time, bashing in another head. I get it. Like, there is a certain amount of battles can be overdone in fantasy books.
And in fantasy shows, same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I do want some battle sequences.
Yes.
But sometimes you can just show me that the battle plan was really well laid out by not showing me the battle at all. And just being like, and then the hero won because obviously, we didn't need to waste page time on the hero being in peril when he's there next episode. So,
because this is really setting up background for Ituralde. This is his background, his situation, so that when Rand does recruit him, right, he's amenable to it, but also showing he's a badass quality general worth recruiting.
Right. Well, I mean, we've been seeing that. This is just a continuation of the Ituralde plot. He's just having battles every now and then in another plot. And yeah, eventually Rand will pick him up and be like, hey, you, the guy who keeps pissing off the Seanchan, be my general. And it works. And
this is a giant battle. I mean, you're talking 350,000 on one side and, another a couple 100,000. How big is the
150, I think.
The Seanchan force is 150. Yeah. So it's,
I think.
You're talking 500,000 people are involved in this battle.
That's a lot of people. I'm not a mathematician, but that's a lot of people.
I'm not a mathematician, but that's a lot of people.
I'm not a social scientist. I'm not a lot of things. But I know that's a lot of people.
I mean, that's an epic battle on any scale, and it just kind of gets skipped over here.
It's some D plot sort of stuff, which is like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that designation, but
I think it's one of the reasons that I hear complaints about that. Like, basically the battles were kind of small in the last battle because the armies could have been so much bigger. The numbers, when you bring all the armies from all the different nations together, are massive and much bigger than what we saw in the final battle. But it would have just been hard to write, I think. I think it would have just been hard to keep track of battles of that size and numbers of that size. Although it would have been kind of cool. I do think we could have seen more, again, this is going back to Demandred, right? Like, not just breaking up fortresses, but oh my God, he just killed 100,000 troops. Let's see Demandred scything down 500,000 troops at once, right? And that, let's talk about oh my God, this entire army that we spent 6 books gathering together just gets mowed down, right? So I wouldn't mind seeing more battle fodder because I think the armies could have been bigger.
I think that the problem is that the armies got too big too fast, and then they plateaued too soon. They peaked too early. I think, at this point, I don't know that we need 500,000 people in a D plot. I feel like we could have gotten away with much smaller armies to still make the same point and had those big numbers reserved for the last battle. Feels like where you should have 500,000 people on a side not in a plot that sets up Rodel Ituralda's character for later. That seems like a waste of numbers. So it's kind of like how Dragon Reborn, Rand's insanity has really escalated in ways that are unsustainable. You know, this kind of feels like that. It's like, yeah, you might have shot you a little too soon on that.
We're gonna pull that back a little bit. Yeah, pull back a little. Yeah.
And also, these armies keep smashing each other to smithereens, which is not great for final numbers.
That's a good
going
point.
into the actual confrontation. If you have 500,000 people fighting, that's a lot of people who aren't going to make it to the last battle.
And considering the Seanchan are basically wiped out, and then he doesn't have enough people left to defend himself, that's pretty much all of those 500,000 just gone.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
And they all could have killed Trollocs, but no, he had to spend them on a stupid trench warfare. It's great. It's not truly trench warfare, but it's just as pointless.
And then we end that scene with him springing the trap, right? He's got a bunch of soldiers that he somehow hid. They got there by being not in uniforms, right? And so he gave the uniforms to the civilians, and then his soldiers marched into the city and hid, is my understanding.
Yeah, and it's really cool how he sort of sets this up, because he talks about how he would have traded 10,000 shoulders for one of the Rockin.
That's a lot of shoulders.
At the end, yes, on but he thinks that's what the trade-off feels like, and then he exploits that very desire. Right, the end of the POV, he says, the reason that I want one of those Rockin so bad is how I'm going to defeat them. They obviously consider these Rockin to be equivalent to legions upon legions of men. So I will take advantage of the blind spot that happens when you're reviewing everything from 10,000 feet.
Which is, I will feed the Rockins the information they want to see while I'm doing something else undercover.
Yeah, his lust for that kind of aerial information let him know what the blind spot to that sort of surveillance would be. And that's how he makes this plan work. Because he's like, well, you guys don't really ground truth your satellite data. So I made some ground lies.
Yeah. This is like early-esque when they basically putting camouflage over a tank and then driving it, somewhere to hide from the satellites. Like... Basically what he did, yeah.
It's if your satellite can only resolve to this resolution, then make sure your disguise is at that resolution's fidelity or better. Done. Now you can do whatever you want. And that's the weakness of the Seanchan. Their strength is that they can move fast and see everything. Their weakness is that their pixel size is kind of fucked. So, he manages to make that work for him because he is a great general. Also, there's another good piece of war lessons in here. One of the bitter lessons of warfare, winning didn't necessarily mean living, and following orders often didn't mean either winning or living.
Yeah.
And that's why I would make a terrible soldier. Well, there's a lot of reasons I'd make a terrible soldier, but I feel like that right there is, it's like, I don't want to follow anyone's orders anyway, and if I do, it's going to be because I think they're going to help, and I don't think they would. Following orders isn't enough.
No.
And I don't think my brain could handle that.
And that brings me to probably my favorite POV in this particular prologue.
Let's settle in for some sweet, sweet stabby time.
The death of Masana.
Masima.
We just saw Masana, now death of Masima.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you,
Love
Jordan.
you, Jordan. Appreciate you so much.
Ugh, names, though. So, yeah, this is the redemption of Faile, in my opinion.
Yeah, if she needed redeemed in your eyes, which, your mileage may vary, this is the redemption. Final nail on the coffin of the slog. Yes, Fuji.
Yeah, the final end of, when fucking Rand threw Perrin out the door when they had the argument about the treatment of the Aes Sedai prisoners and said, get the fuck out. I want you to cover up and do this. That whole plot line finally ends, and I want you to go get Masima and bring him back.
No more Masima.
Masima.
Done with Masima, and in so doing, we will gain Faile in her full glory.
The prophet's fingers bit dirt, tearing trenches in the soil as he scrambled up to the top of the forested hillside. His followers straggled behind him. So few, but he would rebuild. The glory of the dragon reborn followed him. No matter where he went, he found willing souls. Those hearts that were pure, those who had hands that burned to destroy the shadow. Yes, think not of the past, think of the future, when the Lord Dragon would rule all the land, when the man would be only subject to him and to his prophet beneath him. Those days would be glorious indeed, days when none would dare scorn the prophet or deny his will, days when the prophet wouldn't have to suffer the indignity of living near the very camp, the very one as shadow spawn like that creature Abara. Glorious days were coming. That was fun.
I love it when you do crazy characters. You just get so into the insane people.
Yeah. But he's nuts, right? He's been compelled by Grendel, this shining figure in his dreams, which we know is Grendel, right? Like she talks about her tools, and that's compulsion, and through
and
the
he's
dream.
clearly not talking about Rand.
No, he's clearly not talking about Rand.
He's being visited by someone. Yeah, no, it's he was already crazy and broken and having a hard time, and now he has completely broken down within the context of the broken person he was.
Right. And like, I honestly think there is, we see in the beginning of this chapter, this where Grendel says, no, I don't want to use that compulsion on them, because once you use that level of compulsion, they're broken. They're not themselves anymore. And I think this crazy version, and I think that is a direct reference to what we're seeing here with the prophet.
I hadn't even thought of that.
He's not himself anymore. His brain is broken. He is compelled. And what we see as he dies is a moment of lucidity, as he comes back to himself a little bit as he's dying, in my opinion.
Right, and he thinks about how his like memories of his past life are like really fuzzy, No, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that, because I assumed that Grandel's comment was only about, the level of compulsion she needs in order to practice safe sex for her own, mental well-being. But Mistima's obviously not a sexual partner to Grendel. And not all levels of compulsion cause brain damage. We know that Grendel is very good at every kind of compulsion and can choose how much damage she creates, basically. But I do think that there might be some merit to that. That, yeah, Mistima has been compelled to a degree that has kind of maybe lobotomized him in a couple of ways, sort of cut him off, like, sliced his corpus callosum and like broken up some of the connectivity of his brain. And like, yeah, he's kind of not totally dysfunctional, but more of an automaton than he used to be. And yeah, maybe is kind of getting it back a little bit as he dies. But he's having a very bad time because Grendel has abandoned him, right? Like, he's not getting the guidance that he needs in order to turn this around. His mind is just looping, looking for an explanation. He oscillates between thinking about his beloved followers and then how his followers are cowards and how he treasures them, and then he spits at their feet. Like, he is like flipping through every possible reaction, looking for something to hold on to.
Because his faith was betrayed, right? He had this idea that he was going to go up into battle, and with nothing more than his, faith in the Lord Dragon, which, because the Lord Dragon appeared to him in his dreams and compelled him to think that, he was going to charge into battle, and he was going to be protected by his holy faith, which is very white cloak of him.
Yes.
And his faith was betrayed. He lost all of his followers except for a bare 100. They were all murdered, and he doesn't know how to deal with that. So he's blaming his followers, but at the same time understands, like, that's his power, is his followers. So he's blaming them, but also needs them.
Right. It's not like I want to feel bad for him, but also, like, you do understand that a person's mind is going to have a hard time in this moment. Like, if you think that you are bulletproof and you lead all of your friends into battle and you learn that they are not bulletproof and you get away with just a few of them, you're going to be in a very confused and upset place. Like, that's just how things work. You don't have to be sympathetic. That's just how it works. And that's essentially what happened, right? He thought he had holy powers. And that was a very explicit lie from the devil that was meant to set him up for failure.
The dragon had appeared to him the night before the attack, appeared in glory, a figure of light glowing in the air in shimmering robes. Kill Paranebara, the dragon had commanded, kill him. And so the prophet had sent his very best tool, Abara's own dear friend, right? So he sent Aram.
Oh, yeah.
At the command of Grendel who I assume sent that. I assume the Dark Friend Social actually occurred before the Battle of Malden. Sorry, not Dark Friend Social, the Forsaken Fornication. Right. I think we're playing with timelines here. So I think that like the scene we just saw probably occurred before. Oh. Because then she went and said she was told to go kill Paranebara. She appeared in his dreams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
Well, I kind of thought that she had been pulling the strings on Massima for a while.
Okay. Yeah.
And I thought that had set up Aram's corruption a while ago. I thought that Massima had corrupted Aram kind of on Grandal's suggestion, maybe more than order.
Right. But he's saying literally the night before she appeared to me and commanded me to send Aram. Right. That's a special appearance.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hadn't quite thought of that, but yeah, the timeline has officially broken loose of all bonds at this point.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, no, I think you're right. That makes sense with the way that we're getting set up with like set up Fallout, that through this whole prologue. That totally makes sense.
And we do, it's not infrequent to see Robert Jordan write scenes in the prologue that occurred before the final scene of the previous book. That is a pattern he has long established, to be like, oh, guess what the context was around. And even our last Forsaken meeting, right, with Grendel occurred at the beginning of book 6, but it happened before the events at the end of book 5. Because we know that like Grendel comes out of that meeting and then kills Asmodean.
Right.
So this is literally the Forsaken meeting that occurred before the events at the end of the previous book. Sanderson is doing that just like Jordan did at the end of in Lord of Chaos.
No, it fits an established pattern. That totally makes sense. Yeah. I don't feel bad for Massimo, but also like he is just a tool being toyed with by like demigods working on behalf of Satan. Like he didn't have a chance. That's sort of a bummer.
It is a little bit of a bummer.
He was genuinely a person fighting for the light before. You know, he was not a Dark Friend before. He got snapped up not for any sin of being a Dark Friend.
For his literal faith in seeing Rand and seeing the literal dragon reborn, right? This literal Jesus figure comes to Earth, and he literally believes in him. And literally, like, I mean, he hates him and then goes a little fanatic, and there's some lovers to friends, overcompensation, something going on there, right? Like, that was bad.
Yeah, there's some weird shit. Yeah.
But that's not what caused the prophet.
No, not at all. Not at all. It set up the conditions by which Grandal was able to say, oh, I barely even have to do any work on you. You're already at the brink.
But you can imagine a world where she didn't show up. Messana, preaching the word of the dragon, recruits people. Perrin shows up and he goes, sweet, I've got all these people for the dragon reborn. They're great. We're going to contribute to the army and help with the last battle. And you can help me train them up. And they're not going to be meat cannon fodder, right? Like, but because of Grendal's influence, they end up going into the meat grinder for Perrin. And that whole group of people gets cut off.
There could have been a really funny plot line where Perrin's dealing with this prophet guy who just like will not stop hero worshiping him and like following him around and being just like an overly annoying puppy, and like, but it's a good thing instead of a creepy thing.
Here's one way that Perrin ends up with way more troops than he wants in the final battle, is he keeps trying to send them away, and meanwhile the prophet's going out recruiting people for Perrin.
Right?
Because he's like, yeah, you need a bigger army if you're gonna fight for the dragon reborn, man. You know these dudes. Come on, let's go recruiting. Right. Perrin's like, stop recruiting. Oh my god, I don't need another fucking army. You know, and like the prophet's out there like, hey, the religion's spreading, man. Like, what can you do? And Perrin's like, I don't want a religious figure, you know?
Right. Yeah, that it could have been humorous and funny, and it's all Grandal's fault. It's Grandal's fault that Massimo was not just a funny sidekick preacher character and instead had to suck and be like a pivotal figure in one of the sloggiest plots. Like, it's all Grandal's fault.
So the way that the prophet is written in this chapter reminds me a lot of the way that Jordan wrote Faine.
Big time.
Right? Like, I feel like he's definitely using that sort of, you know, gonna kill him, this repetitive, the bouncing all over the place, that sort of, I almost used the Faine voice by default when I was reading it, right?
Yeah, I was like, it's Faine and Massima. You have the most fun with these characters when they're having their little mentee bees.
That or Mashadar, eat the souls, all the souls, right? Like, there was definitely this like
Machin Shin,
sorry,
but yes,
Mashadar, Machin Shin.
But yeah, no, the insane voices, the ranting voices, they're
fun to
It's
read.
a different vibe. They'd be like, I'm a queen, I'm an omnipotent narrator, I'm a stoic hero. Like, nah, I want to be the crazy villain cackling in the corner.
I'm nuts and I know it and I don't care. Yeah.
Right?
No, it's fun. It's fun to read.
Yeah. So yeah, he's thinking about how his followers are great, but also they should have fought better because they suck. And it's, I should have been able to win that battle, and he's angry.
The ones I have left are the best of the best, right? These are the ones with real zeal, the ones who really care, the ones who didn't drive off. And it's like, these are the ones who are really nuts. These are the real crazies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also the lucky ones, right? Just the sheer statistics of the battle. A few people got through the meat grinder. And like they're in his honor guard. They, just got lucky. And this is not enough. I mean, it is enough to rebuild with. You've got some hardcore zealots now, but
A core of 100. I think you need like 100 followers to start a cult. That's what my understanding. Yep.
yeah.
But meanwhile, yeah.
Faile's
hiding.
Faile. Hello, Massima.
How many people do you think have bows? Because they mow down 100 people pretty much no problem. And several of them have several shafts in them.
Faile wants it kept a secret. So I'm not quite sure how she keeps a secret with a task force that's able to take out 100 people in 5 minutes. That's a pretty big secret circle. Maybe it's all Faile. Maybe I'm just underestimating how many Faile there are.
They've been growing.
Probably also more people joined while she was gone.
Right.
Too.
Right. So I'm wondering if maybe like if she had slightly less than 100 and everybody fired a couple of arrows and that was enough, or if you have like more than 100 so that everyone, basically fires once, and then if anybody's still standing, you fire again.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's probably, up to 200 Faile.
Yeah, just shapes and shadows.
Because, I mean, these people are running. They are tired and confused and don't have ranged weapons, and they are running at the archers. So, like, the archers have time to get off 2 or 3 shots, I think.
So I'd say, you could probably get away with 50 people with bows to take out a force of 100 tired,
50 good shots that are fresh and well rested. Well, I mean, relatively well rested. Yeah, they're going to have quite the advantage on speed and processing time compared to the people who have just drugged themselves out of a war zone.
The prophet can remember a time when he'd been called something else, Massima. Those days were growing very blurry to him, like memories of a former life. Indeed, just as all men were reborn in the pattern, so had Massima been reborn. He'd cast off his old, profane life and had become the prophet. And I really do think that's just his compulsion brain.
Which, like, many people talk like that and think like that and act like that. So it's not like it's exclusive to compulsion. But certainly, like, again, Grandal didn't pick him randomly. She picked someone who was ready to have that conversion process anyway and just yes-anded him because it took less effort that way. And he'd be more creative in the motivation that way. He was going there, but like, yeah, he's got compulsion. He's got compulsion locking him in, I think.
Up until, I think there's a moment where we get Massima back. It's my fault, the prophet whispered as the last of his followers died. I feel like, he's taken several arrows to stop some of his followers. That made him proud. So he's still a little insane. But like, there's a little bit of honor coming back. I think he realizes he's dead. His followers are dead. He's got an arrow in him.
And the programming starts to fail because the programming doesn't cover the situation. So the old buried Massima is what comes up to fill this space that he doesn't have anything else to do.
And he sees the blade that's going to kill him and he goes, it's a good blade. I'm glad I get to die with a little bit of honor to a good blade. Like this seems to be the best
Very
end.
Borderlander.
Yeah. There's just a little bit of that like relief that maybe I've been stopped.
And he's like, did I do well, Father? Right. There's just this part. Again, he wasn't a dark friend. He wanted to fight on the side of the light. He wanted to defeat the dark. And like you see in his final moments, him being like, did I do it? Did I fulfill my mission? And you have to, shake your head and be like, kind of like in the last POV, like some people are fighting for the Dark One without realizing it. And it doesn't matter that they don't know. The effect is the same. Massima is a perfect example of that because he never once anywhere in his delusions thought, I'm working for the side of the shadow. He never wanted that. He never chose that.
And his whole death POV is brutal. I mean, this whole she cuts his throat, and you get this fade to black in his head, and it's like...
No, she rams her knife into his heart.
Sorry, thank you. I don't know why I said that. I thought she was gonna slit his throat, and then she stabbed him in the heart, and for some reason my brain is like, oh, she slit his throat. No, she stabbed him in the heart.
This is not headcanon,
not
sir.
Headcanon. I can't headcanon that one. That's actual canon.
Right.
So yeah, he stabs him in the heart, and as he's dying, you sort of see this like reversion to Missima. That had been his name. He'd earned his sword on his 15th birthday. His father had been so proud. It's over then, he thought, unable to keep his eyes open. He closed them, falling as though through an endless void. Did I do well, father, or did I fail? There was no answer, and he joined with the void, tumbling into an endless sea of blackness.
There was no answer?
There was no answer. Just brutal. Just brutal. Like, and just that, I mean, really POV into like, just there's no afterlife. Like, I mean, I guess rebirth, right? That's the one thing. I'm not super fan of the tumbling into blackness. I would have been like enjoined tell the heroes and tell, or I don't know. That's the first time we really see a character be like, I'm dying. I feel like we don't get a lot of POVs from Jordan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of a time when we're really in somebody's head who dies and they're like, oh, I'm dying, and the fade to black. What? Right?
I don't think we see a lot of deaths, no.
No, I mean, I feel like
that.
we see people pass out, like they get stabbed and they fade. We could do some fade to blacks, but this like, I asked my father if I was forgiven, and he said no. Or there was no answer. Like, we don't get a lot of that,
No. I like the visual of just tumbling into the void without any conclusion. Like, I think that's a brilliant way to have a death that, like, you don't know. You don't know. You're still alive as you ask that question, and alive people don't get to know what happens after you die. That's not how it works. You just don't get to know. And so I like the empty, hanging, unresolved note of that. It's so sour in the right way, it's off key and that perfect. Like, I want resolution, but also the fact that there's no resolution is so perfect, especially for a character whose like intentions are good but whose impact is bad. So he kind of like averages out to like how do we judge him? There is no judgment. There is just fading back into the void from which we all came. It's so eerie. And I just love Faile being like, thank you. I do genuinely appreciate the whole helping me escape my captivity. Super solid move that you did for me. But I cannot let you continue to exist. And so I am going to murder you in cold blood right here, right now. Like, I love that she embodies both of those motivations honestly and genuinely. Again, very Borderlander. I mean, these are two Borderlanders Borderlandering as hard as they can right here.
I'm nodding. Yeah. And
then she tells everyone who helped her, sometimes wives have to do murders that their husbands can't know about. So help me hide this body. Help me bury all these bodies. I mean, she is really girl bossing pretty hard. She has a posse helping her hide bodies.
and we've been around Perrin enough to be like, yeah, okay, you go. Like, yes, Perrin can't know about this.
And Perrin wouldn't have done this.
And wouldn't have done this. Yeah.
And it needed to be done. Like, we know that Missima is dangerous, broken, and corrupted. Like, there is no redeeming this husk of a person at this point. Sure, Faile, you do your cold, hard Saldean thing. Go for it.
Yep. But yeah, it's fun. I'm glad Faile did it. It makes her, I think, a more rounded, more interesting person who takes her own initiative in a way that she hasn't for a little while in the books. She's sort of been controlled by circumstances and didn't effectively escape in a weird way. Like, she escaped, but didn't, like, his parents still had to take down the whole place to get to her, so...
And Roland had to get her out of the basement, and...
Yeah. So there's a certain amount of agency that I'm glad she takes here.
And she will continue to take. She's a much more... Like, this is an actual turn for her. She will continue to take agency and make decisions moving forward. So yeah, we're into good Faile times again. And that's all I've got for the prologue.
That's all I got. Yeah, that's good about the chapter. Yeah.
So next week we will be back with chapter 1 of the Gathering Storm.
Of the Gathering Storm. Whose POV is that?
That is Rand.
Ooh, good.
That's Rand.
Oh,
That's Tears from Steel. That's Rand and Min.
Oh, because this is the post strangle.
No. We haven't had the strangle yet. This is just Rand being nuts. He hasn't tried to kill Min with his hands yet.
Oh, no? I thought he lost a hand already. Wasn't that?
Yeah, he lost a hand to Semirog, but he isn't going to strangle Min until later.
I get those two scenes confused. I always think he loses the hand in that first. No, you're right. It's right.
No,
that's when he
gains the one power during that. Or the true power.
Oh. Sorry.
We've been recording for over 2 hours.
Yeah, my brain stopped working. I also was looking at houses yesterday. Looking at houses is surprisingly exhausting.
No, it is not surprising. It is so real.
Yeah.
But let's turn recording off. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Please rate and review us on your podcast app, and consider supporting us on Patreon for ad-free episodes. WoTSpoilers is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.